Good morning. Welcome back. You're still watching Daybreak on this 19th day of August 2024, and I'm in studio with Titus Lote, the Member of Parliament for Kacheliba constituency. Good morning, Mheshimiwa. Wanjiru Gekonyo, transformative governance expert. Good morning.
Morning, Sam.
I have Robert Mbui, Member of Parliament Kathiani, but also the Deputy Minority Leader at the National Assembly. Good morning.
Morning, Sam.
And you're still expecting Jerry Maina, who is the woman representative for Kirinyaga County. As soon as she's in studio, she'll be joining us on set. But this morning on the front pages, the Daily Nation, stalled reforms plunge schools into confusion. It is the story of more than a year after the Presidential Working Party on Education Reforms report was launched. Many of the recommendations are yet to be implemented. The situation has affected government funding for education and operations within the crucial sector. But of course, you know that education has a budget of 656 billion shillings, half of which goes to paying teachers at the Teacher Service Commission, but also so much goes to capitation for primary and secondary schools as well as junior secondary schools. But there has been challenges in releasing those resources to the institutions. Some of the schools are reporting dilapidated infrastructure, lacking crucial facilities like laboratories, libraries, and other facilities that are necessary, especially for children transitioning to JSS and eventually to the senior school. Oginda's fate as EACC boss now in President's hands. They're talking about a bill that is under the works to amend the qualifications of a chairperson of the EACC. Some are reading that this could be the result of a tiff between the EACC and the ODPP. Front page of the Standard, terror squads Ruto unleashed on Gen Z, and they're saying that Standard can reveal the men who infiltrated the protests. Youthful Kenyans are trained to take down terrorists. They use cars without number plates and clad in balaclavas and hoods to conceal their identity. And then are reporting headline heroes behind growth of Eldoret town to a city, and the images are indicated there. Then of course this is an important day for the county of Meru as their governor goes to the Senate for the proceedings that are to look into her impeachment, so the Senate will agree with the members of the county assembly, or they'll once again clear the governor like it has 2 times before. So let me begin with you, Honorable Mbui. As you look at the 2 papers, what really stands out for you?
Everything in all these headlines is extremely important. I mean, considering we just come from the issue of Gen Z demonstrations, you've run a report here of children that are still in hospital. One, I think, was paralyzed. Not to forget the tens of young boys and girls who have been killed. And then now we come to know that it is actually terror squads that Ruto has unleashed on these Gen Z. I mean, it's really an unfortunate situation. This, for me, would be really stands out. But not to forget even the issue, the mess that is in the education system. Right. Is also a major problem. This funding model at the universities, which has created a situation where parents do not know whether their children will go to school. You know, people who've studied all these years, have qualified. I saw one student from somewhere in Kisii who had an A and is not sure whether he will go to school because there is uncertainty. Right. There's a lot of mess in this country. There's serious confusion that required a lot of discussion. And I think the sobriety that is being used to run the country is lacking. On this matter of the university students, I would say that even the idea, even the concept that they've come up with is fairly discriminatory when you say that you have 5 bands and you say that there are people who will get a certain amount. So 5 bands means basically 5 different levels of income. And then you have to identify who earns what, and you have to also figure out what are the other expenses. There are people who earn a good salary but have got very many children and very many dependents. So the whole thing, the whole concept of education has been messed up. I want to advise Kenya Kwanza that Moi, when we say Moi ran the country very badly, and Moi was, I don't know, that people who say he was corrupt, the people who say he was a dictator. Education at the university when Moi was president was free. completely free. And so and Azimio, as part of our manifesto in last campaigns in 2022, was to go back to free university education, because that's one thing that we cannot make mistakes about. Let us just make sure that whoever qualifies to go to the university does not miss out the chance. As a member of parliament, there are very many young people I meet who tell me they dropped out because they couldn't afford fees. And some dropped out 2 years ago, 3 years ago. The money we have under CDF may not be enough, but the government can put a proper plan to ensure that university education is free. If you are to talk to some of these young young students in the university, you'll be shocked the kind of life that they live. Some may even scrape through, parents do some harambes, manage to pay their fees, but they live like paupers out there in squalid places. So I think for me also the issue of education, sorting out that issue of education, sorting out the issue of university students, that is something that we must do, because that is also represents our future. So on the two things, Sam, the issue of killing our youth and the issue of our education system and even our secondary systems of education and the confusion tells us that the government in power today has no plan for the future of this country.
Okay. You make a case for free university funding, but I'm just wondering, how would we finance that? Already education is taking 27% of the revenues collected. How would you finance more than 500,000 students who are in universities right now? Sam, it's not my problem to give solutions to Kenya Kwanza. Let them figure it out, because at the end of the day, part of the reason why university education is expensive is because of the wastages. I mean, what does it really cost to educate a student in Kenya? What does it cost them? Because education is just about the tuition, which is basically the books, probably the salaries of the lecturers. Those are the most important things in an education setup. So it's not rocket science. Figure out how much does it cost us to pay our lecturers. Pay our lecturers. If the lecturers are paid and the infrastructure has been put up, are you saying that the overheads of paying electricity and such would be the expense? So I think at the end of the day, it's just a matter of sitting down and figuring out what exactly does it cost to pay for one student, and multiply by the number that we have and figure out how to raise the money. Okay. All right. Wanjiru, your thoughts, and it's open mic of sorts, looking at the top stories in the papers.
Yeah. I think I have to agree with Honorable Mbui completely on the education, the mess in the education sector. And when you look at countries, because we are equated a lot with the Southeast Asian countries, because these countries were at the same development level with us in the early 60s. And for instance, South Korea came to Kenya, looked at our development plan of the time, adopted it, and used it to grow. So what did South Korea do that we didn't do? They dealt with their governance. They dealt with the culture of implementation. So, and how have they then become these leaders on the world economy? They have invested in education. They have invested in health. They've also invested in technology, because this is the bedrock of development. So what we are seeing really is alarming, because the Kenya Kwanza regime is very incompetently undermining the foundation, not of the present, that caused the Gen Z to come out onto the street because of the pain Kenyans are feeling now, but they are undermining the foundations of our future growth, because due to these untested model, they were advised, the education stakeholders advised from the Uhuru Ruto, because you have to remember this process of introduction of CBC started then. And they came with this big rush of we must change, we must implement, and they were told, hold on, there is a way you do education reforms. One, you design. Two, you get the stakeholders to agree. Then you pilot. Now, when they did a small pilot, the pilot showed a lot of gaps in the implementation. But instead of stepping back to fix the gaps, they then, you can remember CSs were being turned over in Education Ministry to implement by force. So number one is we have the Uhuru Ruto and now the continuation of this really failed regime. Because when you look at William Ruto, you look at Uhuru Kenyatta, they have failed to understand what the country needs. So what they did is they've entered into the education sector and are roughshod implementing a system that is undermining the foundation of teachers to teach, the foundation of learners to learn, and they are ignoring the gaps because back to governance. A report by TSC says there's major accountability gaps in the education sector. Ethnicity, there is sex for marks, there is political interference, there is financial mismanagement, there is shortage of teachers, lack of professionalism, mental health issues, dissertation, immoral behavior. These are software issues that need to be dealt with so that the money, the 27% of the budget that we put in there can work for us. Right. So aside from inefficiency, there is a failure to deal with the governance foundations of the education sector. Add to that IMF privatization. Because what the big struggle that we are having is that IMF has come with monetary, fiscal, and even developmental recommendations that are not in our interest. Because the IMF model is actually protects their investors. It's really geared towards the Western world to benefit as much from our resources as possible and leave us just where we are. Linked to that, there is the corruption. So the Kenya Kwanza regime has failed Kenya, is continuing to fail, has ignored the easy wins, which is governance. Fixing governance doesn't take huge additional allocations. So what would we need to do is listen to the stakeholders, so that we don't put our children, a whole generation. Linked to that, there is something on the EACC, which is an accountability issue, that the JLAC committee of Parliament is seeking to use Parliament to remove the chair of the EACC because there is a standoff between the EACC and the DPP. Because the DPP operates like a personal secretary to the president and has been collapsing cases on corruption so that those people who are being...
Is that what they're trying
charged
to sort
can
out?
Then get public office?
Is that what they're trying to sort out, or it's just your inference?
No, I think it's very clear. They have said they are putting in a provision to require the chair of the EACC to have the credentials similar to a high court.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes. So where did this come from? And why does it come midstream? What is the failure that they are trying to fix? And why are they then alluding that it will be implemented immediately? What is the gap that is here? And why does it come at a time when we have seen that the EACC has refused to withdraw corruption cases where the DPP has failed? So we are seeing Parliament, the present company notwithstanding, because it's not all of Parliament, but too many in Parliament have agreed to do the bidding of the executive. And in fact, not just the executive, of the president.
All right.
Because that is the person who holds the reins of power right now.
All right. Even though on page 12 of the Daily Nation, I'm reading a clause of the bill, however, is a saving grace. It states, Section 2 of this Act on qualification for the EACC chairperson shall not apply to a person who immediately before the commencement of this Act was serving as chairperson of the commission. So it would appear that if it sails through as indicated here, then Bishop Oginde might be free to serve his full term. But
that has been contested on the floor of Parliament.
Okay.
Yes, so within the committee. So whether that will see the light of day as the bill passes, then brings to question. Aside from the reasoning behind it, because fighting corruption is not just a legal matter. Actually, it's a social-cultural matter. And we have recognized we have sufficient laws, but we are lacking people of courage, people of independence, and people of integrity. Those are social issues. They are not legal issues.
Okay. All right. So, Mheshimiwa Lote, your thoughts, and it appears they have set the stage for you. They are talking about university education, the education at large, but also the hot issue for this week, which is about universities funding and learners that are just about to join schools. We also know there's a teacher strike. There's a notice that expires, I believe, on the 26th of August when the schools are reopening. But also the other question about EACC and the terrorist goods that Standard is reporting the president or the government may have unleashed on Gen Z.
Well, thank you and good morning. I think just listening to what my colleagues are saying, I cannot agree more with what they're saying, because what we are discussing today are all critical, very critical to the levels where if we do not put it into a national discussion, we might lose a whole generation. This country called Kenya in East Africa prides itself as one of the best educated country. In fact, we say that we export more of our very learned students out there. They actually outcompete when they go to any country. And this is because of the way we had set our education systems running. And I think it is important that we continue looking at it in that manner, that we can continue becoming the country that has the best learners. What personally I'll say is that this is a very important discussion. The only sad fact is we might be going through a phase where if we do not handle it very well, we might lose that credibility, and that countries such as Uganda, countries such as Tanzania, or even Ethiopia can outweigh us. But we do not have other resources. I think our human resources have been able to build this country and put it as one of the best countries in East Africa. If we lose our education capacity, we might be a laughingstock very soon. And I'm afraid if we do not implement some of these commissions and the reforms that have been put in place, we will lose. One thing, Sam, I'll say is that yesterday I was watching Citizen at night, and there was a gentleman that sat in the studio and talked very well about the education model, right, and the funding model and the banding. And I think there is one thing that I'll come back with it here today. He said that there is an appeal model, because I looked at how Kenyans were responding, and I think that is the gist of the matter. Kenyans were asking this person and the Higher Education Loans Board to be able to reconsider some of the bandings, because somebody will say, I cannot go to school because of the fact that I've been banded wrongly. And I think band number 3 became a critical item. I don't know band number 3 is for what, but everybody that talks says I was being banded in number 3. Yeah. And he said, we need to go back to the appeal. And I think I want to say that is the silver lining in the whole cloud. There is an appeal system that is here, so that we cannot throw everything, we cannot throw the child with the bathwater and say that is all wrong and so everything has been messed up. It could be wrong, but that appeal system is important. And I ask Kenyans, can you be able to utilize that to be able to appeal? Can you be able to all go into these offices and be able to explain yourself better? These are humans. Dealing with 500,000 people at the same time is not easy. And so there are those that never complain.
In your constituency, have you heard of fundraising events for students that are joining universities?
Sam, that is not a question to ask, because everybody, everywhere, there is a fundraising event. I am 100% sure.
What are they doing
today? People are fundraising because our economy, she said it very well, our economy is the whole thing. If you go to countries, if you look developed countries, if you go to developed countries, some parents are able to pay because their economies can be able to sustain the incomes of these parents.
So the question I'm asking you, Mheshimiwa, if you look at some of those bands, there is the lowest band, which is people that earn less than 6,000 shillings a month.
6,000, yes.
And they would pay, in a course of 122,000 in a year, the family would pay 6,000 shillings.
Yes.
Which is 3,000 shillings a semester. Do they need to do fundraising events?
Yes, they do. They need. They need. Actually, some tell you, 3,000 shillings. 3,000 shillings for you is nothing. But there is a person that cannot raise 100 shillings per day. And this person can still require for fundraising. But I know we have actually over-glorified fundraising in this country to levels where I can also fundraise to go get money to go and buy and pay for my bride price. We've glorified it, that matter. And to the levels now where if I need to struggle to get 3,000, I still need to look at other people. But let us not look at it that way. I will ask people, let us look at the reason why we cannot have a parent pay 3,000 shillings per semester. That is our economy. There are people that cannot raise 100 shillings per day. And I want to appreciate the fact that out of 122,000, they are asked to pay 6,000. That basically means the government has also thought about it.
Do you give CDF to university students?
The CDF?
Yes.
Yeah, we give CDF to all. It depends on constituencies. Personally, I give CDF of between 10 to 20,000.
So if you have to give CDF of 10 to 20,000,
yes,
and this learner requires to pay 6,000 shillings a year, why do they need a fundraiser?
Not the CDF, like Boria said, is critical. It's not to cover everybody. It is not that CDF. If you look at it vis-a-vis the number of students that I have, if I give you that money, there are too many others that cannot get that money.
Could it be that there's information that is not available to the students that are joining university?
I don't think at this age, I don't think information lacks in this.
About the university funding model, that's what I'm asking.
Obviously.
The university funding model has just come out. It just come out. And yesterday when there was an explanation, I actually saw a lot of Kenyans inquiring. Why are they inquiring? Because they are now seeing this information probably for the first time.
Okay.
So there should have been an information gap. And now people are getting to understand. And I think it will be important that we continue discussing this.
All right.
And putting it in discourse for people to understand.
All right. Njeri Maina is the woman representative for Kirinyaga County. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Sam.
It's been so long. I've not seen you since
I know it's been
you actually elected.
No. I've been here previous times.
Not in my show. But anyway, good to see you. We're talking about the top stories of the morning. I don't know if you have any thoughts about the university funding model, but also the situation in the education sector.
I think, and what my colleague Lotte has said here is that we seem to have a communication breakdown, because this funding model did not just come about yesterday when the Kenya Kwanza government got into power. We communicated our intention in regard to changing how we fund higher education. And for me, I feel that as a government, and the people who are at the ministerial level must be responsible for any communication and ensuring that Kenyans disseminate the information on what cascades to government, or rather implementation of government policies. So in regard to the funding model, it is very idealistic, and it is something that is futuristic, but we missed the point in communication. And some, from where I sit, we cannot be doing last-minute communication as government. We had such a high rocketing number of Harambes, and they're there all the time, but then this time we were just quite high. If you gauge from, let's say, the last 2 years. So from where I sit, it was just a communication breakdown. The funding model is very good. It is very futuristic. But then we also need to see how, as a government, we can communicate effectively. And we cannot leave this work to the president alone. I mean, the president cannot be the one who is communicating, trying to implement. There are people who are given that job. So they should be telling us, are they saying to Kenyans that they are unable to fulfill their mandate or execute their mandate?
That's interesting that you should say that, because I think the president spoke yesterday or the day before and said that the government is going to raise the allocation to the extremely needy students up to 95%. This 95% has been there. The peers of higher education has been speaking about it. So it's not something that will happen. It's already in place.
It is in place, but what I'm saying is there was a communication breakdown between what the ministry is cascading down to the local mwananchi. You find that the letters that were out, and I believe my colleagues have seen them. You find a student who has a letter that says you're supposed to pay 300,000. So the universities were just giving students an application form that says pay 300,000 shillings. There's no clear communication on what the government perhaps will be catering for once you apply for the program.
So you think if that information was available, maybe the fundraising events would have been fewer?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Interesting times. We're taking a short break here on the break. When we come back, we'll be diving into the conversation about the National Treasury now is in the process of working on a tax amendment bill that should see some of the tax measures that were lost in the Finance Bill 2024 coming back, including eco levy. Stay tuned.